20 minutes to have you explain to us your budget request and any capital requests you have, as well as future plans. I know some have planned out pretty far, 4 or 5 years, just so we are aware of that, and then to allow council to ask any questions of it. So first, I'd like you just to go over your budget for 2013, changes that you feel are important to explain to us, and then the capital request. So whoever wants to speak is fine with me.
Well, ours is fairly self-explanatory. We didn't really go up much, actually. It's basically the same as this year. Wages went up a little bit. We shifted from part-time up into paid-on-call because we just don't have people to do part-time work. And our paid-on-call is takes up a little bit more depending on what we have scheduled and how many calls we have. So that shifted a little bit. Office supplies, we went up a little bit. Fuel went up only because the cost of fuel went up. Insurance went up, workers' comp went up. That's stuff we really have no control over, so. And our capital projects, for 13, we're looking to possibly replace the pickup truck. And also replace the, we've been working on trying to get figures and for the pumper. 2014, we put in for the fire police van. And we had 22 air pack cylinders. The air packs were purchased from the general authority. And they only last 15 years. You have to replace them every 15 years. So we're coming up to our 15th year for 22 of them. We've been slowly replacing them as we have them, but we have a pile in 2014 that will have to be replaced.
Why do you have so many?
What happens is we try to do on so many on a cycle, but it just wound up being that way. In fact, a couple years ago, we did get a deal from the company, and we got some at half price because they were halfway through their life cycle. So that made it through the schedule off. But what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we did get some from Bureau that were from Indianapolis that they had traded in. And like I said, we got them at a great deal. In fact, I think we got them for like $200 or something like that, which is about half price. So, and that may have been what threw everything off kilter.
How many would you use? Like, how many does a fireman use? I guess is my question.
Basically, what we do is we have 26 air packs. For each truck, it's required to carry so many. One truck is, just for an instance, the ladder truck is required to have 6 air packs on. The rescue is required to have 6 air packs on. The pumpers are required to have an air pack for every seating position. We got 5 on one truck and 4 on the other truck. And we also have 4 on the squad truck, and it's required by NFPA. So, and then what we basically do is each air pack has its own cylinder in place. And then there's also a spare cylinder for each one of those.
Okay. That answers my question.
That's the reason why there's so many cylinders.
Now, I noticed the volunteer pension was in your operating budget, and for 2013 is proposed to be in your capital budget.
It's the same place it was this year and the years previously. It may have just been. Those are all in the regular budget. It's not the capital projects thing. It's still in our budget. it's 411,
Oh, so you're saying the capital outlay, you just call it capital outlay as part of your normal
budget, yes.
operating budget?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
those is in household rescue equipment.
I see.
all the-
Yes, that's all still part of our regular budget.
I see, I'm sorry. I
No, no.
I just read capital and I saw it there. Now, volunteer pension, is there a calculation that gives us that amount? Is there a state-required contribution? How do you determine the amount for volunteer pension?
That comes back from the volunteer fireman's insurance has the paperwork on that. and
Okay.
it's,
So they send you a bill and say, this is how much you have to contribute annually.
Yeah. It was lower in years ago when the economy dropped out. They told us they have to, because they were charging interest at like 6%, they needed to backtrack the interest down to like 4.5%. So we needed to put in more into the contribution to keep it solvent, so.
And that's something now that new volunteers don't get,
Right.
right? That went away. It's just the people who have been volunteers may be vested into a pension
Yes,
for their time served.
yes.
Do they still accumulate hours into that? Like, do you still have firefighters who are accumulating towards that pension, or is it
We
gone?
basically froze it. It's
Okay.
basically frozen at this point.
Okay. So it should never increase, it should only decrease as,
Yes, and give or take, I think at one point we had talked to them, they had estimated probably in another 12 to 15 years it would be paid off. And we wouldn't have to be adding any more to it. Now that varies depending on
how many
interest
people?
and how
Sure.
much they make.
Mhm.
Not necessarily the people, but how much money they make in their investments. Because the people won't change. The people are already in and are frozen. That won't change.
Frozen at the amount they can get out of it.
Yes.
It's just getting it fully funded at this point.
Yes.
Understood. Questions? Mr. Brown?
What increase for the 2013 salary increase do you have, did you calculate? What percentage?
For her,
Yeah,
that's not gonna matter, that depends on.
Not for her, for the,
Under all the wages?
I'm sorry, yeah, let me clarify. Under the fire chief, and I would only assume for the fire inspector as well, what percentage was that
Well,
you guys
the
calculated?
inspector's wage is based on what he gets as a firefighter, so that depends on his training that he gets. I'm not sure what we put in for the chief, which would ever be whatever you guys decide to give a raise to. So
I'm
that
at a
would possibly
3.9%, that's,
I'm sorry?
I'm at a 3.9%.
It may be that.
Is that what you guys
I mean, we didn't know.
That's what it calculates to.
Okay. I'm just making sure, that's all.
Yeah, those are flexible. His would be flexible. Mine would be flexible, depending on what.
Well, not really, you're in the secretary's unit, so it wouldn't be, right?
Well, but whatever's agreed upon by you guys,
Right.
you know,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not.
I
it's
understand
not-
what you're saying, toward that.
Other questions? Dr. Waddell?
I see you're requesting to replace pumper 712. Tell us a little bit about what the need is there.
Okay, basically what we did in 1998 is we bought two pumpers. We actually bought two pumpers basically for the price of one pump. We got a great deal. And we decided that to offset the expenses,
The replacement cycle.
the replacement cycle, at 10 years, we would replace one pumper. That way, we're not replacing two pumpers at the same time back in the future. Well, 10 years came and went. Now we're at almost 15 years, and it'll be actually almost 15, 16 years until this pumper gets replaced. And we're trying to get on more of a better cycle for replacement of the vehicles. Reason why we have the three pumpers is because of the ISO. It requires us to have a rating of 3,550 gallons per minute, and that's covered with the three pumpers that we have now. So, have to basically keep the three pumpers. We have two pumpers plus a pumper rescue, like a rescue pumper.
I guess the question I'm asking is, okay, I understand the time
Right.
frame, but is there something wrong with it? Are you putting a lot of money into expenses, or
We are.
why would it be? Why is
We
that
are,
going to be-
that one, The one that we're thinking about replacing, well, the one that we are thinking about replacing is basically sort of somewhat nickel and diming us. It's basically been, it's actually wearing a rut in the road going from to the service center and back again. So that's one of the things that we decided to step up a little bit.
We had a problem when you started it, you stepped on the gas, it would go and
Someone
stop.
out and they
So for like 2 years, they've been trying to find this problem, and we finally got our final bill, and that was like $4,000. And the generator went on it, so we had to replace the generator, and there's just little things that are, it's been a lemon from day one.
Yeah,
So I got 2 for 1, maybe.
yeah.
Or it's off of 1 for the other.
In fact, they were trying that, they were switching, when we were having that problem with the throttle kicking out, they changed the ECM units on both trucks, and figured, well, if the other truck starts doing it, then it's the ECM unit, well, the same truck was doing it, so they had to switch everything back again, so they're doing a lot of experimenting as to what the problem was.
What would you say in the last 5 years your repair expenses have been on that vehicle?
Probably 8 to 10, because we just spent 4, how long ago did we do the generator?
That was probably within the last 5 years that we did that. Now it's almost like eight grand, I believe. I think we had done
They
that.
had to put in a whole new system.
Yeah, they had to put in a PTO, it's a hydraulic, a driven generator that runs off the engine, which is off the transmission, so they had to put a whole new PTO system in, and a hydraulic generator. And everything basically, the gears were shot in the PTO and stuff like that. Basically just chewed itself up.
I'm sure it's got to wear just from practice time with it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Ladenburg?
Yeah, more questions on the pumper. I remember specifically when we bought the ladder truck that it was brought up about the next truck that was going to be replaced, and I remember specifically that you guys said that
We did.
you guys were going to pay for it.
We did. However,
did.
it's going on 3 years, and the price of the pumper went up $50,000. And we just can't figure out where to come up with that difference in the money.
Well, same with us.
I understand.
And I have to say, I feel a little bit snookered from the last time when we bought a ladder truck, borrowed money to buy a ladder truck, because one municipality over, it's good enough for them, but not for us to use for a couple more years, and that kind of really irritated me that happened. So I don't want to have the same snookering going on with the pump truck, saying we need this now, and it ends up in the fire department, one county over. That it's good enough for them to buy and use in their department, but not good enough for us to use. And I don't want to see it happen again.
Well, what happened was...
Oh, I'm not finished yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And you say it's nickel and diming you.
Yeah.
Well, $441,000 is a lot of nickel and dimes.
Right. What part of the problem is it's a 20-year-old truck, so parts aren't available anymore. So
We heard that with the ladder truck. So why is it that another department finds that valuable and they must be able to get parts somewhere? How are they able to use that truck if they can't get parts?
I don't know.
Well, that bothers the heck out of me. All right, and then my next question is, under the recap, it says wages, $326,000. Who's getting paid? I thought we were a volunteer fire company.
We have paid on-call volunteers.
Paid on call. I was always under the impression they only got paid if they were out on a call. Are you telling me that when they're sitting around watching TV, they get paid?
They're on standby. They're considered on standby, and they get a minimum amount, yes.
What's the minimum amount?
It's based on their training.
Okay, what is the minimum amount?
Less than minimum wage. Some of them are $5.
How do you get
Some
the
go up to-
$326,000 on minimum wage? We have departments that aren't even, I don't think, close to that.
Well, we're dealing with 40 people on the schedule over a year's time frame, and for 300.
I was always under the impression that they only got, quote unquote, a stipend if they went on call. But you're telling me they get paid for sitting around watching
Okay.
TV.
Since 1998.
Yeah, but they're a volunteer fire company, so you're essentially telling me they get paid the whole time they're on duty, on
No.
duty.
No,
So there's a time when they aren't getting paid.
if they're on the shift for 8 hours, and there's no call, and then at 8 hours, they get paid for 4 hours.
Let me ask you this. On 16 years of being on council, I've never seen a wage list or scale of any kind from your department, or ambulance for that matter, showing the wages for what people are getting paid. Every person that works in this borough, union, non-union, or office people before they were union, now they're union, we always had a say on what their percentage of increased pay raise was. I've never seen that with your department. Why does that not come before council, whether we approve a pay raise or not from year to year? Who approves that? It's never been brought to this council, ever. Have you ever remembered that? Anybody on this council? Remember saying, okay, fire department people get 1% increase this year. This year, they're not gonna get an increase. It's gonna be a freeze because we don't have the money. Has anyone ever remembered that conversation in this council? I haven't in 16 years. Why doesn't that happen? Who makes those decisions, what the pay raises are? Who makes those decisions?
It's based on the training.
No, who makes the decisions?
It's based on their training. If they come back, they get a quarter for certain classes, and they can lose it. We have some people that'll lose $1.50 an hour because they didn't get the training that's required, or that's on our list to
Who
get paid for.
determine that it's
So-
$1.25 or whatever it is for training?
Well, we did that when we established the pay rates.
Well,
way
it's never
back
come
when.
before council, ever. Who determines that, oh, we can just randomly give whatever we want to pay them? You guys make that on your own?
Basically.
Well, we can't do that.
We
We
came
don't-
to you guys way back when in '98 when we wanted to do this, even before that, when we wanted to do this, and you gave us approval, and after that, you guys never asked or said anything, and we did
Well,
what we were doing.
and I'm
so.
part of that being at fault, but when I see a number like this stick out, $326,000 for a part-time, or for a volunteer fire department, and is that including the chief's wages in there?
Yes,
Office staff?
yes.
Right here, right,
Okay.
go back a page. Here's your wages column. It shows you what that includes.
Where's the volunteer?
The wages are right at the top here. So if we go through it, these are all the wages. And you're
Yeah,
paid on
which
call.
line?
Paid on call is 136.
So it's $175,000. So, where's the $3,000 increase coming from? So if council says, you know what, we don't have the money this year, it's gonna be frozen at 2012, we have the right to say that, do we not? I don't ever recall that coming before council. They're volunteers, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're the best, they're trained, don't get me wrong, but they're a volunteer fire department. To see a line of that expense for volunteers,
I don't know what to tell you, we've been doing it for
and,
years.
you know, and I'm
Are there
partly at fault, because I never brought it up, but I was always under the impression that it was a stipend paid for when they went on a call, not on
They do
call,
get that,
and that,
yes.
maybe that's my fault for not understanding the way.
Are there
I
other-
wanted to bring it up, because I don't think it's right.
Are there other departments that work that way? Do you know that?
There are other departments that will pay per call, they don't have people on standby, in that regard, but they do pay like $7.50 for every time they go out on call. Well, I think Lower Macungie pays $7.50, Upper Macungie, they pay, most of them are paying now when they go out on a call and they respond. We just happen to have that, we have people there on duty, standing by, they're not working, so they get paid half their rate,
Now,
half their hours.
Your part-time maintenance, those are people who are on a schedule that come in and,
Well, those, we don't really have, we have, when they do work, physically do work, they get paid their full rate. When they clean the floors, when they do janitor duties, when they're repairing the building or whatever, the trucks, whatever, they get paid as a part-timer because they're doing work. When they're there on standby, they're just there and they're getting paid for half their hours.
Where does the volunteer part come in?
Well, because we put in half the hours that they put in is not paid. So we're give or
I
take-
coach Little League Baseball. I volunteer. I don't get paid.
Well, we've been doing it for how many years now, so however you want to do it is. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. We got approval years ago to do this. And it came from you guys, because you give us the money.
That's all I have. I want that brought up for discussion, that's all, because I don't think it's right.
I think it'll be discussed in executive session.
Okay.
Now, I have one other, the mechanics wages are in there, I'm assuming that is to pay the mechanics that work at the Public Works Garage.
Right.
Now, our hope is to move that out of your budget and put it in a general budget. I don't know if that's been communicated yet, but not that it'll come against you, for you, just hopefully we can all work together to utilize those mechanics to the best of everyone's ability.
Yeah, that's all done through Jeff, I believe. He assigns and pays whatever, but it just comes out of our fund, so we don't really know
You
how much.
don't deal with that anyway.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We had also talked about the insurances. They're all going to be coming out of each individual budget and put into the general. So that'll be.
Which they're numbers that you don't control, that we just tell you what they are, you put them in your budget and they get paid out. They really don't have anything to do with individuals, so we're gonna try and move that and streamline that and make that a little simpler. My other question would be, there's a few building things, like building related things in here. I see you have the energy, which looks like a great situation to me, that you're paid back in less than a year and a half for what you invest. Looks like a good deal. My only concern would be that we don't just do fire department, that we work together with the ambulance to do the whole building when we do that.
I think that was for the whole building.
Oh, is it? Okay, there wasn't a way to tell from the
electrical
quote?
guy that came around.
Yeah.
We did, when
That
we
was for
replaced the
whole building.
generator in the station, we did some rooms. We did the office and we did certain lights that we felt at that time you'd get away with underneath the generator.
Oh, yeah, you're right, it says I could see ambulance station, ambulance office now, I didn't look careful enough.
But this would now be the rest of the building, so.
It's on that page 2 of 7 of the e-power. Has Chief Nonamaker seen this, do you know?
No, I don't think so.
Probably not.
Okay. Mr. Pepe, could we forward him a copy of that agreement then to look at?
That was basically to replace the existing fluorescent lighting in the building to the new energy efficient setup. So the one day he was here and I took him through the whole entire building.
No, it looks like you made a good contact with someone there that would do the work, and it looks like it pays back pretty quick. In my opinion, it looks like in 1.35 years to pay back a project, seems like
I have a copy here for
pretty
you.
valid.
I'll just pass it back to him.
What is the cost for the project?
Almost 6,000 it pays back in 1.3 years in what you save, so. I don't know, it's something we have to talk about, but I'm glad you did it. It looks like, it makes sense to me. Any other questions for the fire department? Dr. Waddell?
Just look at one number here quickly. And just one that kind of jumps out at me is, I'll make sure I've got the right line here. Mileage, how much is mileage in there?
Where's my?
I'm picking up the last, I thought it was 3,200, I think it's only 600.
$600?
Yeah, I thought it was one of them, like 3,000, I had a question. It was 3,000. Never mind.
And what do we pay out that 600 mileage for?
That goes for, if they have to drive to classes, long distance, the inspector puts in for that.
So I know we had a few recently who took training for a week, and I know we paid their mileage.
Yes.
So that is that line item.
Yeah, they went out to fire academy in Lewistown.
Very good. Any other questions? Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just, it's something I might ask when we come to the officers meeting, but I spoke with Assistant Chief, the training aspect of it. By any chances, what are the potentials of that training? From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, please do, my understanding is we pay for that training, or the fire department pays for that training. What are the options are there to decrease that? By paying 50% and the employee or the volunteer pays the other 50% for that certificate? Is that something that is an option for you guys?
You know, we only have $3,000 in for 40 people, for training for 40 people, so that
Which
really
is-
doesn't spread too far. I mean, for all the training that
That's a
if
lot,
they
I
want to
understand.
get the pay rate and get the money when they're on duty or when they're on call, they have to take a lot of classes. And every year, we have to take, the drivers have to take emergency driving, we have to take hazmat, Those are all required, that they have to be done annually, and I know hazmat and EVOC alone is like $60 per person.
But I'm asking that,
So for us to,
if it's $60, why can't we pay 30, because it does not, the certificate stay with the person?
yes,
Okay, so
It goes in their
it's a
pocket,
win-win
yes,
situation where
yes.
we're getting a certified person for $30 and they're getting their certificate with them for $30. And that would make up the,
you could, but the 3,000 isn't enough, when we pay out of relief some of that for them to have training as well, so.
it's just a question I have.
I mean, I guess you could if you really wanted to. We do on certain classes for some of the out-of-towners, depending on the course, they
Do
do
they get
pay
paid?
half.
Do they get paid while they're trained?
Department training, but not training, no.
Mr. Lambert?
I apologize if I missed this because I was a few minutes late. On your very first page here where it says fire department, the very last line, it says ISO hit us on this. What does ISO stand for?
It's the Insurance Services Office.
Thank you.
They establish the insurance rates.
Those were my notes that, yeah.
Oh, those are yours, okay.
Yeah, I don't know
apologize.
that you've seen the ISO report yet. Jim, did you get my email this afternoon?
Yes, I did.
Okay. The ISO just did a new evaluation.
Did it affect our rates at all?
It will. But
So every
we are-
homeowner's rates will go up because of this?
We are working on a plan.
It's not gonna change until the middle of next year. We have 6 months to contact ISO and set up a plan that we can, correct the problems that we found.
What are the problems?
Basically, with some of the lack of people, we weren't able to do some of our hose testing, which is required every year.
You mean the people that are getting paid couldn't check the hoses?
And the pump test.
Well, we can pay them full rate and do it, but they don't want to be paid full rate. They come from work, so they stay there while they're coming back from work, and they just don't want to put in the part-time hours.
Brent, I have, it's literally probably a 25 or 30-page report. I'll get you a copy of it. There's more than that. I mean, they require double the training of what we're providing, and our people are at a lot of training. So we got, I think they dinged them on that. They dinged them on some of the water pressure for the fire hydrants.
Do they make it so hard that they do that so they
Well,
can
yeah,
increase rates?
One of the things is, and maybe you guys can speak to what a 3, what a rating of a 3 is in some of the comparable communities that have 3. You said Allentown City.
Allentown's a 3, we were a 3, we were now just set back to a 4. In the 80s, we were a 4. We went back, but they did change the way they do the interview. Before, the guy that did the interview did the report. Now if I do the interview, I pass it off to somebody else and he compiles the report. So it's not the same guy compiling the report. So there are a few questions that I have.
They require us to do 24 hours a month, I believe, of firefighter training. Well, we come out 2 hours a week, there's no way we're gonna have these people do 24 hours.
And if
So
we do
that got
more,
done.
if we do more training, we're gonna lose people.
Now,
This is what it amounts to.
now if it increases homeowners' rates, it only affects the fire part of the insurance, right? Nothing else.
I think the majority of this, isn't this just for like businesses? This part, not necessarily homeowners, but businesses?
No, there are homeowners
it's
that are
residential.
affected too, yeah.
Okay, and then a question on revenue. Do we generate any revenue with our training grounds that we, I'm assuming we have one of the best training grounds in the Lehigh Valley. Do we generate any revenue from any other departments that train there or come there for training?
No. We got the grant from the county under the auspices that we wouldn't charge for training for using that facility.
Do any non-Lehigh County fire departments train there?
once in a great while, but
Sassmansville?
Sassmansville. They're about, I think the only one, Topton once in a great while, but they haven't been done in quite a while.
I was just wondering if that could be a source of revenue, that's all. We put some money into that,
You gave us $1,000.
and some money.
It's some money. I won't argue that. But we have $1,000 in the budget for the training grounds.
And what does that 1,000 cover?
Propane to keep in and little odds and ends, you know, things that need to be fixed. We have some, yeah. If the fire departments come down and they cut a hole in the roof, they buy the replacement. They come with their own plywood and have to replace it, so it's not a charge or cost to us.
And when I was referring to putting money in, I meant building the new structure that's there. That's what I'm
Right.
referring to.
That money came from the county, 400 something.
I think the borough put some money into that. Yeah, you're right, it was a county grant though. I don't have anything else.
Anyone else? No, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you taking the time. We'll be in touch. If there's any extra paperwork, I'd be interested in seeing the pension information, just to see what it is. If you don't mind sending it over sometime,
we
I'd
can do that.
appreciate that. Anything you have for us? Any questions for us?
No.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
It's cold.
You got the idea, Chief? Go over your budget with us quick. Tell us your capital. Tell us your future plans.
Well, you all have in your binders my 5-year plan, quite extensive that it is. We were instructed to put forth what we thought we would need in the 5 years with documentation, and that's what I did. And if you look at the 5-year plan itself, looking at some of the areas that we have in your spreadsheet, it's broken down over 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. There's some protective equipment vest replacement and also some for the part-time staff. Our protective equipment, our helmets, coats, and everything are over 20 years old. Basically, they're disintegrating. And you put the helmet on and you have a ring around your the black, whatever it is, the material comes off and they're deteriorating. Our phone system, I'm not sure how old it is, but it's been in that building for a long time. We have we have an answering, $29 answering machine on it. There's no voicemail. There's no, the inability to communicate. So we've been talking about that for a period of time. The floors are to us are a safety issue when it rains or when it's raining or wet. They're slippery as I'll get at. Now, understandably, I went and got prices on a commercially applied floor. We can do better than that probably ourselves, but again, putting that in there. We've addressed the office space issues. The last several years, it's not getting any better. I had pictures from 2 years ago, and I looked at them today, and we're more cluttered and jammed than we were 2 years ago. I put in for it's a modular office system, and that's in the binder. And it can be configured any which way, but it would have to sit out back behind the station, up against the wall, and be tied in. So that's that. The garage doors are, again, 35 years old, and we got prices on replacing those with insulated doors, which would help with energy savings and costs, and that number's in there. Front office, we have no heat. We have a heater air conditioner that's 35 years old that basically I think is held together with rubber bands. We looked at this summer, that he was able to come in and replace something from a part he had. I don't know how much longer that will go. So that's an issue or an item that's on there. I have no heat in my office. The heater broke 2 years ago, and we have a space heater we use. And I also put in for a command or chief's vehicle, which I put in every year, and we just go through that. The big thing is in 2014, you'll see the Life Pack 15s with the Lucases, and you should have literature in your binders concerning that. The Life Packs are what we use for cardiac monitors, for defibrillation, for monitoring cardiac patients. The units themselves are outdated. 2014, there will be no parts available for them. And I have information as far as, and I'm not sure if you have that in your booklets or not, but the literature describing what the life expectancy is of them, and basically the 3 Life Packs that we have, the recommended replacement dates were February of 12 for 2 of them, in June of 14 for the other one. And we purchased those refurbished. They weren't purchased new, so they were purchased refurbished at a price of about $18,000 versus 25 that they were charging at the time. You'll see in your booklets or your things where we have the quotation from Medtronics or Physio for the replacement of the Life Packs. One of the nice things is, which they've done, is they've come up with a lease program which they didn't have before. So essentially, we can lease over a 5-year plan for like $2,400 a month versus a $145,000 capital outlay. So that's an option which wasn't available, and I believe it's 0%. How they figure it out. The other thing that's in there is the Lucas CPR devices, and they're the mechanical compressors when a person's in cardiac arrest. And they are about $14,000 to $15,000 a piece. And again, the quotation is in there with 3 and 3, one for each of the trucks. But I think the option there for us would be more so the leasing than the outright purchase, because of the, essentially what we're doing is we're buying 1 Life Pack a year. If we lease at $2,400, or if we go 3 years, it's $4,038. And I believe you should have that in there. But all the supporting literature is there. Also, there's customers that are using most of the squads have switched over to the 15s. If not completely, they have a couple in their system. They afford us to do more that we haven't been able to do in the past. Also in 2014, replacing one of the ambulance 6393, which is a 2006, and it's one of the 6.0 turbos, the 6.0s, which has been. The fire department said they had a lemon. Well, there's about 3,000 of those out there that have that engine in, and we just are not. There are a lot of problems, and I just had it in the shop for what we thought was transmission, but it's just the way that it runs. So it's running okay and it's strong, but we need to plan for replacement along the way. And then there's prices for the lettering and the radios. And our radios, again, in the trucks are old. The newest one's probably 2005. We purchased the 1 set, and everything else is before that. Also, the wheelchair ban that we have, which we do minimal wheelchairs at this point, but if we're going to continue to do so, we're going to have to look at replacing that at some point. 2015, the BLS van versus a truck. If we decide, part of my plan is to ramp this up and do wheelchair BLS transports to generate more revenue for us so that we can sustain some of this stuff.
What is BLS?
Basic life support. It's non-paramedic. It's a van. If you go back far enough, you remember the old vans. They're narrow and they're short, and basically for transporting people, they're more economical. And again, instead of the $138,000 for a Braun ambulance, you're talking 68 at this point. So these prices are all based on today's prices. And I'll tell you that they changed the standards for the NFPA. They as of January 1st, the truck that we bought last In 2011, in gas, was $105,000 less. I ended up paying, I think, about 70-something for it with the trade and the arm bending that we did to get it. That truck coming out of the stall after 2000 or January 1st of 2013 will be $138,000 because of the increase in the standards. That's just, and it's not something that you're going to see on the outside. It's all structural rollover and patient and crew safety. Copy machine we have going right now is a good deal and it works, but again, looking ahead, again, they're available for lease, so we would be able to do a lease on them. And it was kind of funny because I said, well, what's the price? And he goes, well, it's this. I said, crying out loud, that's less than what I paid for the other one, and it does more. So the technology's improving, the price is coming down, but again, that's in there, figuring down the road that we'd have to do something along those lines. Our portable radios, like this, these were 2004, so they're now about 8-9 years old. They're in good shape, but how long do they last? We put in there for replacements somewhere along the line for 12 of them. They're about $900 or $700 a piece. Pagers, I don't have one on me, but they're the duty pagers, and they are about $540. And then I also figured in there computers, because we did replace them last year and the year before, but again, we're on a 4 or 5 year cycle for replacement. 2016, as far as some of the equipment, the litters, the evacuation chairs, some of the stuff, that's just kind of a broad number there that, I got a quote to run for doing that. And then in 2017, we're looking again for replacement on an ambulance because of the cycle of replacement. And diesels are expensive, they're changing. Whether or not if you look at a Ford truck front, it probably won't look the same in 2 years because they've gone to that European style, and they're going to have Mercedes-Benz diesels in them probably. So I'm sure that those prices on the trucks were gasoline-powered, and the trucks we get are basic. I mean, the only thing we get are power door locks on the compartments and drop-down chains. I don't do any fancy lighting, pretty much cookie-cutter standard right out of the box. So you can see that that's what I considered as potential replacement or numbers or items that we'd have to replace or discuss over the next 5 years. It's pretty inclusive. It's a good number, large number, and whether or not we need to go in that particular direction or not, I won't know. But we were told if you don't have it in there, it's not going to get considered, so it's in there. So that's my capital improvement.
Now, your yearly budget shows a decent increase and more cost to the taxpayer in the end. Can you explain to us what caused that much of an increase?
Well, I looked at it from different angles or different positions. As you are aware, I am down one full-time medic. We are operating with full-time medics and part-time EMTs, 24/7, 365. So I looked at it from the standpoint of rather than replacing the medic, go with 2 full-time EMTs to pick up the slack, which would give us some additional latitude. I also looked at increasing the part-time and the overtime wages and staying with the part-time EMTs as we're set up. And then I think on the bottom of the second page of the line item budget, you'll see that the number is 869,894 with replacing the medic. And again, one of the things we have to consider is with any full-time employee is medical benefit. And I don't know, I can't tell if we would hire somebody that's single or someone that's married, but that would be quite a spread in the numbers there. The other numbers, the ones that are highlighted in blue, I don't know if you have it copied or not, but I was basically informed that the insurances, things that we can't really control would be an item that would come out, but they, however, are included in the budget as it stands. But those were numbers that I highlighted to go through there.
They have two 2013 columns, a regular 2013 and a status quo.
Yeah, status quo is with the part, without the additional full-time medic.
Okay, without the full-time medic.
Right.
Well, thank you for breaking it out that way. I think that's very helpful for us to see the difference between with the full-time medic and without the full-time medic and not have to assume what the difference would be.
And as far as wages and increase, I figured, I think it was 1.5.
You figured at 1.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever the other contract was, I went with that number, the 1.5%.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Questions from council? Mr. Labenberg?
Under your capital improvement projects, if you had to pick the top 3 highest priorities, could you please tell me what they would be?
This year.
Yeah, that would be from 412,205 to 412,250.
I would say,
And can you list them in order too, 1, 2, 3?
I think the first 3, I have money in my grant accounts, and I also apply for some grants that I probably can cover with my grants, those first 3.
Okay.
I would say my highest priority, outside of those, not using any of the money, any additional money, would be office space. That would be my top priority.
The modular office system?
Or some type of, something, in that light. Expanding the office space, which we're up against it in the building.
Does it have to be on-site?
It could be off-site,
Okay, that helps.
okay? It could be off-site. Garage doors,
So that office space would be first, what would be second?
the garage doors, and then the curb and crossover out front. 'Cause that's chewing up my tires. And we've done, Public Works did some patching, which has helped.
That's not listed on our capital.
Is it not on here?
That's not
Yeah, right
capital
above there.
improvements.
Curb crossover apron.
Yeah,
412,373, right above that.
It's above the modular
1,
office.
2, 3.
They're all 4.373s.
Yeah, they're all 370.
No, they don't have the same. Not everybody has the same paper.
I don't have it.
I don't have that.
Not everybody has the same paper.
Do you have it?
Paper.
No, I think they have a piece of paper. They don't have the same, piece of paper isn't the same as mine.
Next page.
His total's not the same?
Okay.
No, I don't have it either.
I know what happened was, I think what happened, when I went back to the station, I had missed the
Okay, so
There's a
the
paper
curb.
that gives a removal and replacement.
right,
No,
that's it.
you don't have it.
It's not on the list.
I have it on mine.
It's a separate.
You made me feel.
So I had an early, I must have had an early one. I have it on mine,
I have it on mine.
and I have it on
I
mine.
have it earlier.
There is a separate cost estimate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be
That's
3?
number 3.
Yeah.
It's, just so you know, the number that would cost would be $10,800.
Yeah, I got it from Brian. But, yeah, is there anything else listed on that we don't
No,
have?
everything should be there.
Just that one? Okay.
Yeah, and that was my fault, because when I came up, had so many papers flying.
You brought the amended one to me.
The
The
next-
copies are probably already flying off the machine.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That was my
The,
bad.
without me following through your thick packet, you're very well prepared. Could you tell me what the lease would be for a year or monthly for phone system?
It should,
Because I think there's advantages to leasing because of technology changing all the time, and
Yeah.
also if something goes wrong, it's just replaced.
let's see where we have that in
And that phone system, would it also cover the ambulance too? Would it cover the whole building?
Looks like Chief 303, but there's some other stuff on there, 10%, there's a bunch of
Yeah,
there's a first lease option
here.
here.
Yeah, it would be in that.
There's a $1 buyout, there's a $1 buyout with 90-day deferred option. I don't-
There's like a bunch of
Four of
different
them, yeah.
options as far as.
So $303 per month?
For
For 24 months.
If you lease it for 60 months, it drops to
139.
$139.
$300 to lease phones.
Yeah, but.
How many phones are there?
They end up putting in all the bells and whistles of, you could have conference calls with 90 different people and all that stuff. I mean, that's what they do.
So is there a lower package?
I think there's a number of options that were in the quotes.
$303 for phones, just to lease them. I mean, you're talking about desk phones, right? Not portable or anything.
Well, there would be a portable, one or two portables in there for the girls, because we have to go back and forth between.
Not cell phones, though.
Not cell phones, just it would be.
Cordless.
It's like a
Cordless.
handphone.
So how many actual phone units would that be?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
2 14-button, 3
6, that's basically $50 a month for a phone? Per
If you're,
phone?
if you're leasing, yeah, if you're gonna lease, if you buy it outright, you know, it's, I have another price, but I'm not quite sure that
That's
it's,
hard to believe.
yeah, well, it's $6,500 for the whole system installed.
If what Shane's saying is true, and that is for all the bells and whistles, is there a lower scale phone where you could just...
We really didn't, we got, what we got was, you know, the handsets and the cards are what, the combination cards, which give you the ability for, like, I think it's either 3, it's like a group of 3 or 4. You have to buy a card that will do 4 phones. So if you have 6 phones, you've got to buy 2 cards, which gives you the ability to expand to 8 at some point. So that's, you know, that's pretty much where, and I have, these were basic, you know, give me a price, and I haven't really negotiated anything with any of these folks. It's, you know.
Sure. No, we appreciate that you have the information.
We tend to do better when we get down to.
We can actually do this, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I, you know, spend a lot of time with, you know, going through, and there's, you know, there's instruction, there's training, there's, you know.
There's also other companies out there.
I was just gonna say, is there other, I mean,
Yeah.
did you price this out, or you just got one, and that's your basic guideline right there?
They were requested for budgetary reasons to get several quotes for each item.
Okay, so if you bid it out or searched, you could find it cheaper probably.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions for the rest of council? Mr. Brown?
Chief, you brought up a situation at Public Safety about your fax line, adding a phone line for, I think it was like $13 extra a month. If you go with the option of a newer copier, will that fax line satisfy that? The fax line within the copier,
It's
will that
actually
satisfy
no, it's
your-
actually for the computer for the billing through Medicare. It's a direct, it's not quite a, I guess we call it fax line, but it's a direct line for Medicare. Because once she starts transmitting, if somebody tries to fax in, it can disrupt the output, which then means that we don't know if everything went or not. So that was the extra line, the extra phone line.
You needed a dedicated line.
Dedicated
just for
line,
that.
like you would for a fax line, I think that's probably where that term came up. Yeah. So it's,
The other quick question I had was, you said you're running out of space and you have more items that need more storage. Those items, can they be consolidated? I don't know how important they are to the department, but can they maybe potentially be sold off to create room, or?
most of what we have, the storage, the problems that we have are people space, as far as office space or, you know, space for our staff. And then we have the records. And with the record storage, we need to keep anything, I think it's 7 years or whatever, 7, but every year when we switch out, we shred. You know, we take everything out of the, you know, what we can throw out, we do. However, with minors or with a pediatric call, they have to remain until they're after their 18th birthday. So, you know, we have we end up storing that. You know, we have to keep it. We can't destroy it until they're 18. So, you know, there's equipment, there's storage. You know, as far as like our, I mean, if you come down to the station, look, there's stuff all over the place. You go under my desk, you can't get under my desk because I have office box or storage boxes under my desk because there's just no place to put it yet. So, you know, the office issue is the big issue.
And last question is, how important is it to replace that full-time medic to you, in your opinion?
I would think that it's important, and I would hope that we could do that. The flexibility that it gives us helps us to get, the biggest problem I have, and we're trying to get some more part-timers on board, but we use that that other medic as a float in the past to facilitate if we had openings on night shift or day shift or whatever, so would be my first choice. However, we do what we need to do.
Go ahead, Mr. Lakeman.
Will that extra medic actually generate revenue or to the point where it would pay for itself or somewhere near, or?
We always had five, we have 6 full-time, we had 6 full-time medics. And we're down to 5. We had both day shifts were full-time. The medics were full-time on day shift, both. Now, since we lost one of our medics, I've been spending more time in the office because I don't have enough time, to get everything done on the truck for 84 hours, so. But my position has evolved to the point where there's a lot of administrative that goes on, and that's, we've trying to run a 45-person department working full-time on the street.
But will hiring another medic generate more revenue?
It could, depending on how things fall out. There's another proposal in the very back of the binder that I'd like to speak to you all at, but it's, it's some, it has, I'd like to do it in executive session just because it's got some
Sensitive.
Let's say, it's a
property and some other things that
It's a legal matter.
So I'd like to, address that at another time, which would kind of give you an insight as to where I'm trying to head with some of this. But, the additional medic would cut down on some of the overtime, because we do float. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
What's the hourly rate right now for a full-time medic?
They range, from 21.37 to 24.68. And that higher rate is my assistant chief. And those go through the process of whatever, increases in the past have been passed on with my folks on the non-union side.
Mr. Lakeman.
So wages have always been set, and you do your increases with whatever the borough employees?
Whatever I'm told the increase will be at is what I do.
Okay, so you've been going by borough guidance?
Whatever the borough manager told me the increase was going to be, that's what we put in for.
Okay, thank you.
And our budgets reflect that initially.
So in this case, this year, it'd be 1.5%?
Based on,
Yep. Shane?
yeah, based on the first year contract rate.
Thank you. But that doesn't happen with the fire department?
His are included
No?
in the salary. In the salary numbers at the front of your binder, the ambulance.
Unfortunately,
ambulance
this
employees.
is on my desk, I didn't
Okay.
get to.
But they are,
read through
the
this,
ambulance
but-
employees are in there. Anything else? Your preparation's amazing, Chief Nonamaker. Thank you for taking the time to put it all together. I think it'll answer all our questions, give us all the information we need, and if we have anything else, we'll definitely be in touch with you.
Absolutely, just, ask and I'll try to,
But I appreciate the amount of effort you put into your preparation. It's very thorough.
it's heavy.
Wasted 4 hours of my day.
It's 1/3 of the book we have.
Yeah, that's what they're asking.
I follow instructions.
Can you have a week schedule in the salary?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't break it on that part. Give me a second.
Just keep rotating, right?
Kind of keep it quick.
You are, you're still in the end, huh?
That looks like the hot seat.
You don't have Mr. Farnsworth this evening?
No, you'd like them not to come. You will see a section of planning and zoning. Jim said he's not coming at 7 o'clock at night to talk about his one item. Bottom line is if they adopt the 2012 UCC at the state level, we would need to spend about $3,000 in new UCC books because we're mandated to move to whatever UCC code that the state adopts. So he's asking that we would reserve $3,000 for the new books, just in case they adopt it. We don't know that they're going to adopt it. It's the biggest sham that I've ever seen as far as the UCC and their adoption of laws. In 2006 they adopted it. In 2009 they adopted it. Then they repealed half of 2009's because the
Sprinkler system?
The sprinkler system issue happened. 2012, the fight has been that there's not enough significant changes to bother adopting it, but that was the same fight in 2009. So we don't know that they're going to adopt it or not. That's something that usually comes down probably December, January, sometime in there.
Why do they force you to buy the whole book? Why don't they do an amended with the changes?
Because it's $3,000 in their pockets.
Good old government. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about.
All right, Mr. Clapper.
Hey, Mr. Ladenberg, Mr. Holstafer, Ms. Gilbert, Dr. Waddell, and Mr. Brown. I really appreciate you guys taking the time for meeting with us. I know you got a lot of other things to do. Before I start, I'll tell you that, I've always been more than willing to adjust our budget however we need to go. I know we're heading into a tight year, so you can count on our department to do whatever we need to do to make whatever adjustments we have to make. Having said that, there are two mistakes on my budget that I had given you. I had marked up our operating budget with changes to the line items that would be affected. I essentially highlighted each department and then wrote the increase or decrease off to the right-hand side. On the first page of the Public Works, specifically line item 01-430-440, this year we had budgeted $37.50 for uniforms, and I realized I did not write the number in there, and that's essentially going to be, I believe, 550 times 15, whatever that number is.
550 times 15?
Yeah.
8250.
And that change is because we are hoping that we can go to uniforms.
Yeah, that's a contractual. If we settle on the contract, that's
That
part of it.
includes the proposed $300 plus the initial uniform cost. The other mistake that I made is on my capital request, I have an $80,000 expenditure listed for a paving machine. That should have been backhoe. So just to point those two things out. But
What line is that?
that is on my memorandum listed under Public Works, on my capital expenditure list, which is not your individual line items, it's more the memorandum section of my request, bottom of page 1. paving machine is listed as a medium. That should be a backhoe. Okay, so typically what I've done is I've not taken the opportunity to even increase or guess at what any wage accounts or any insurance accounts. But I did go through and mark all of the line items that I felt needed to be increased. We talked about adding some safety money, some different things like that. There are a couple of line items that go down substantially. One of them is the water quality testing in our water fund. But the accounts really are identified, other than that one mistake that I had pointed out to you with the notations off to the side about their adjustment. And then additionally with that, I prepared a semi-5-year request for capital expenditures, and it's very, very expensive. I have to tell you that as I started writing all these things down, I really started feeling somewhat greedy. And it kind of affected my ability to look at this openly. I know that we are hurting for money. And what I would tell you is I have 3 dump trucks and I have a backhoe that I hope to replace in the next 5 years. That's essentially my 5-year plan. There are some things that are required. I believe we should call them a requirement for this year, and I'm hoping to talk you into that. My first item in Public Works is 3 new dump trucks. And the reason I put those obviously is that's hopefully a 5-year expenditure. I have 3 trucks. My oldest truck is 22 years old. We can't get parts for any of the 3 trucks. It's really a testament to how the guys take care of them and the level of concern that we put into them. We have good mechanics and the guys really take care of the trucks, so to get them to last that long is really something said about what the guys do. I kind of had a thought that if I could get you to fund 1 dump truck at full price, which is $140,000, I have been talking to the guys about buying some used, 2 used late model dump trucks to kind of get us over the hump a little bit. We've been discussing that. I don't really care to do that, but I think that it's something that's doable. We would essentially be able to get 2 good functioning dump trucks for the cost of 1. Maybe that would help. The next 3 items in that Public Works section are really what I would call mandates. They are mast arms repairs that we now know about them, and pedestrian signal devices that I believe we are out of compliance of our agreements with PennDOT for our traffic signals. So I think those things are something that we're going to have to do. And then, going down through this list, the road project could be much more than 400. I just put a number in there that I thought was doable. There are numerous streets that we can look at and identify based on cost to try to hit that target. A lot of the items with asterisks I did not provide you invoices for because they're either items that are going to change drastically by the time we get to that point, or they're just parts to do the work. Moving to the next page with recreation, we have a few expenses that you may or may not be aware of. Our refreshment stand, and we have some expenses as far as the way of refrigerators and freezers. The health officer let us go by this year without getting commercial stuff. We have to meet that requirement next year, and that number is somewhat estimated. I do have some prices, but we're planning on buying used stuff, so that number could go down hopefully. The bathhouse roof, I've listed through all of these items, either a very high, or medium. The bathhouse roof has been leaking for several years. We've tried to Band-Aid it. That $30,000 is going to require some specs put together and bidding that, so the cost could come in a little bit less. There's 2 other items in this budget that I would call extremely important and hopefully would be able to call it mandatory, and that's moving down into the water line item. And that's, of course, keeping the meter replacement program going and things like that. But the valve exerciser that we've listed is something that we are kind of deficient on operating our valves in our water system. It's something you should be doing on a regular basis. And it is really hard to make any headway when you've got a guy out there turning them by hand. This equipment is a trailer equipment with air compressor, has a valve exerciser that ratchets up its pressure so you don't break a valve if it's old and stuck. It has ways of vacuuming out the valve box to get to it. It is a way that you can actually kind of really knock quite a few valves out in a day and make some headway doing what you need to do.
Those valves, what are we, when we say valve exercise, like what valves are we talking about?
All the valves in the street. At each
Just the street
intersection, you have a valve to control shutting off water when you have leaks. You have valves that go to our hydrants, and you also have hydrants themselves that are supposed to be open and closed and operating. And we've been extremely deficient in that effort because of the cost of this sort of equipment. You don't make very much headway when you send a guy out. It takes 22 plus turns to open a valve with a large T-wrench, and you can imagine after a short period of time, the efficiency just goes really, down the tubes. The only other item that I would really call important, and that's moving down into this, all of them are important, but I would call this mandatory, I hope I could say that. Moving down into sewer, our flushing truck. That flushing truck would cost us probably close to $200,000 to replace if we purchased it new. It is something that sits there 90% of the time, but when you need it, you need it. It's what you use to clean sewer lines. And the pump, just from the mere fact of it holding water and sitting there for, it's a I think it's early 90s. So it holds water, so it gets percolation, it gets, just starts to rot out the motor, the seals, it leaks now, so you've got puddling on the floor. The pump and drive assembly on that is $18,000, which is our mechanics doing the work. They would ship the unit to us, and we would replace just the pump portion of that truck and keep the rest of it because obviously it's all still intact. That actually is a very minimum reduced price because their truck is no longer made, and they have a few of these laying around, so they're giving us a good deal. It's a brand new assembly. So, just a quick recap, my three top things that I think are very important is a new dump truck, I think a valve exerciser, and replacing the sewer pump is three things that I would hope to be able to call mandatory expenditures. Beyond that, I'll open it up for any questions you have.
Did you do anything to the wages for the snack bar down at the park?
Did not.
Did not, okay.
I did not because I felt like I wasn't quite sure how we were going to handle that. We could include them with the park wages. I have to say that Nancy did a wonderful job. And I think what we're doing here, I think we're going to see this really improve this next year. By the way, there's that auction. I am going to attend that. But,
okay.
There's some good things, and I met with Nancy about some things that maybe she could get. There's a couple things that I think would be good.
Good.
So we are going to at least go see what we can do. But no, I didn't do anything with wages at all.
And I agree. You probably shouldn't have because we don't know yet. But just so we're aware that we have to work that into a budget for next year. We're going to have to figure something out there. You believe Nancy's available and willing?
She, I think, is more than willing, and I tell you, I think we really have a good person online with her.
Yeah, I mean, we've already started working on things for 2013 as far as contracted services with possibly Coca-Cola. We may go a different direction with that too. But she's already thinking ahead if we decide to keep going. And Jeff and I have talked many times about, we would strongly recommend that you consider just keeping what we ended up with. Have Nancy run it. Just let us run it.
It may turn into something more this summer with a new baseball field. I don't know that. I don't know when the use of the baseball field will increase drastically, but I have a feeling at some point it will with a new baseball field. So it may that snack bar may become a little more, it may become a little less if EYA chooses to reopen at some point. And I don't know that we'll know that, but just so we're prepared.
I think with a full season, with us running it as a borough, with Nancy running it, I think, now she'll be able to finally implement maybe some new ideas, some new things, run it more efficiently. I mean, this is kind of the thing that she does for a living, in a regular job, so.
I think going into it, starting at the first of the year is gonna be
Yeah.
all the difference in
That's
the
the
world.
difference.
So,
And we won't have to worry about anybody whining that they're not profiting.
It should generate revenue if it's run properly.
We believe that we can at least break even, probably profit, based on some of our calculations towards the end of the summer.
I think it's one of those situations that, I think it's of paramount importance that it's open.
I agree.
It makes us, if it's not open, it affects our pool patrons. It affects our revenue there. So I think it's really important to have it open. And I don't think you should expect to really make any money on it. I think if we break even, I think we're in the tall cotton. And I think we can do that.
Questions for Mr. Clapper? Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Quick question on the upgrade of the mast arm.
Yeah.
For the ADA requirements, do we have to, for the pedestrian walk or not walk signage, does that have to be upgraded to the voice, for the voice and for the, also for the counter as well, or is that an option?
I believe that's an option. I think the problem is that, and this is at 10th and Chestnut, if you look at those placards that are in place, they're very faded and broken, and they're actually obsolete. What they're to be replaced with, to be honest with you, I don't know for sure. I don't think it includes the timer and the voice activation. I think it's just the green guy, red guy on a box. And I got a proposal from them for that cost figure, so that came from Telco. So I can tell you that whatever he's proposing meets current regulations. I do not, I can check into that.
No, you're right,
I do not think that it includes the.
Somewhere I saw that the countdown timer and the voice is not included. I don't know where I read
That's more of an
that.
option, that's
Yeah,
not,
it was an option.
that is not a requirement.
No.
That's what I guess my question is,
Okay.
what is required versus?
The interesting thing about the mast arms, Hanover was asked to look at the damage to there was an accident at 6th and Chestnut in '09. We went through 2 years or longer of finally getting a settlement for the repair to that mast arm, which in '09 was 10 grand. And we got that settlement finally in 2012. But by that time, the requirements had changed, and the cost went up to $25,000. And so we were so then the Public Safety Committee met, and I was directed to get Hanover to look at it to see if we could let it wait until this next budget year to replace, or if we needed to replace it right away. They mistakenly went to 7th and Chestnut, and they found another dented mast arm. So that's why you have 2 dented mast arms, because now we know of 2 of them. And so basically it's the metal has been caved in, and so the structural integrity of the mast arm, it's got the weight on it, is compromised. And so the engineer is telling us that we should replace those.
The other question I have is, under recreation in your memo or capital, you have pavilion roof.
Yes.
What pavilion roof would that be? Wouldn't all the pavilion roofs now be replaced after this general authorities money that we just received?
Well, we have 1 pavilion left at the park, one of the 4 along 14th Street, but we also have the furnace dam.
Okay.
And so this would be for, and we didn't do anything yet with that pavilion because I'm not really sure what the disposition of that money is going to be. We were kind of waiting to see what was happening with the recent developments that we had just
Yeah,
spoken about.
I had sent you an email to go forward with.
Okay, so we'll go forward with probably the one at the park. I think the furnace dam will be a little bit more expensive, but that's what that's for.
For furnace dam?
For furnace dam.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you go to this auction, we're just speaking about the snack stand at the pool. Are we looking to replace that any kind of cooking equipment or refrigerated equipment? Because
What I'm trying to do is we have 2 freezers, we have a refrigerator. We have
that's
a
a
chest
residential refrigerator, though.
All of that's residential.
Right.
So we gotta get rid of all of that. Additionally with that, we have an ice cream freezer that currently belongs to Nelson. So what I'm hoping to do is there's a little sandwich counter at this auction that has a refrigerator, a little small fridge. Nancy thinks that we can use that, got a little storage, use that and not get a regular refrigerator. So that solves our refrigerator dilemma, if that is a commercial unit. And we only need 1 freezer and 1 ice cream freezer. So, I'm hoping that, yes, to answer your question, some of the stuff is, the cooking equipment we're saying is okay. We have two French fryers, and the equipment that I was planning on looking at was there's a popcorn maker,
Yep.
and there's a snow cone maker that I thought would be something to, if we can get it for the right price. But there's some other things like candy displays, and
Is that one fryer working right now?
both of them work.
Because I know the one fryer we had,
Well, we got parts, we ordered parts, and Alan fixed it.
that's
So,
working 100%
Yep.
on that.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
So that part of it's good.
Dr. Waddell?
Jeff, under the water proposal, I see $100,000 for the meter replacement program. Where
Yeah.
are we in getting that?
We have
What
three-
percentage are we?
We are about 75% there. And just to let you know what this 100,000 will do this year is, when we first started off on this endeavor, we purchased handheld meter reading devices. And we were outfitting these homes route by route. There's 6 routes that we read. And we didn't want to spend the money for a truck unit until we got to the point where it made sense. So we had these little individual handheld units that we would download each route into, and then they could use that handheld device to wake up meter by meter and do it that way. Well, those have become several years old, they're actually outdated, we're hunting for batteries. Where we're at now is we're ready to purchase the unit that goes in the truck. We have our own laptop, and I'm working on prices for that, but it'll come out of this $100. And it will be where you go to 2 or 3 places in town, and you wake up the meters, and it grabs all of the readings instantaneously. And then instead of having individual handheld units, you would do that. And I think we have some apartment complexes that we have larger meters that are more expensive that we have been holding off on. And it may be that this year we do a little bit more of that with this unit, and it would enhance and eliminate some of our labor.
How much money do you foresee in the future that we're going to have to put out so we can finally say we're done with the replacement program?
I think we're going to be done in 2014.
So another $200,000-300,000?
200.
200,000
Yeah.
after this 100?
100 after this one. I think we'll be very close to being done. And it is, the program's been working very well. What we're doing, and you all maybe you don't care about this, but what we do is we go to a house, and we're doing 2 things. If we go to your house, we can look at your previous water meter history, and we can tell how much water you use a quarter. And by that, we can figure out how old your meter is. And if your meter is over 10 years old, we're replacing that too. So we're kind of spending a little bit more money and then the MFU unit we also mount. We change out the touchpad, we run new wiring. So it's a little bit more extensive than just what you might
We
think.
can hold you to $200,000 more.
Well,
This will be done.
I knew I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah,
We're very close, we're 3/4 of the way there.
I know Mr. Laborberg will remember this.
Not correct, I still remember it.
I haven't finished.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Lakenberg?
Yeah, Jeff, I've been involved with Public Works for the majority of my 16 years on council, 15, soon to be 16. And probably over half of them I've been chairman of Public Works. I have to tell you, things keep mounting, and what you said early on is, you accept, you know, what the budget constraints are, and I think you've been pushed to the side more often than any other department. You know, the fire department, they got their ladder truck. The police department got their brand-new police station that we'll be paying on until 2021, including the ladder truck. We had this Broad Street project, but I don't know if you can consider that capital projects for equipment for you. I mean, obviously, your dump trucks are for what, 91 and 92, and they get used heavily. I mean, they're used for plowing every snowstorm. They're used for picking up leaves, and I mean, they're just used heavily. And it's amazing that they lasted that long, 20 years, 21, 22 years. The other items that you asked for, I mean, you have a lot that are, and I appreciate you listing the importance, very high, high, medium. You didn't even mention anything low, because by the time you got to that point, you knew pretty much. But
You have a point, Mr. Laborman? Oh, okay.
I appreciate you listing their priorities as 1, 2, and 3. One of my suggestions was going to be, and it is tied into the meter replacement program. Well, first of all, I need to know what that truck unit will actually cost, because I haven't heard a number on that, approximately.
I have been chasing the guy for over a month. I think that it's going to be around $20,000 if we have our own laptop. I'm not sure, I haven't gotten any numbers yet, so I'm only going off of kind of a hearsay conversation. It is basically the software that we would be purchasing, a truck antenna, and outfitting the laptop that we already have.
All right, I just wanted an estimate, so 20, 25,000.
But that's coming out of this meter.
No, I understand. The reason I bring it up is, what would be the chances of taking $20,000 out of there for the truck unit and maybe putting only $10,000 in for meter replacement and using that remaining $70,000 towards the dump truck, and put that on the meter replacement on hold, other than the ones that need to be replaced because they're broken? Put that on hold and put that towards the dump truck, since that is a high priority, and just delaying, I mean, you're 75% done, just delay it for 1 year. Even so, with the delay, you're still replacing some meters, and then get us your dump truck, which is the highest priority. Do you think that is workable?
I do think it's workable, and it's those kinds of thoughts that, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I understand that, you know, that meter program could be drug on. Personally, I have no objections doing any of that. I do think that the top 3 priorities are what I told you, so.
All right.
Now, your dump truck, though, is a public works item, whereas your meter replacement is a water department item, correct? So we'd have
However, we do fund some of the dump truck purchase out of water because we use them for water leaks. We use them, you know, in water.
In the capacity of working on anything water related, sure, you'd use your dump trucks.
Is there anyone in the department close to retiring?
Yes.
That's maybe somebody would retire in 2013?
I don't think so in 2013, but
Okay.
there's probably 3 or 4 people that
Getting close.
are getting close.
Okay. One thing I was thinking of how to cut some costs was the compost center and the hours that are up there. As you know, we used to be open to 7:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and then our Saturday hours, and now Mondays we're only open to 2:30, I believe.
Correct.
What I was thinking is, I mean, it might save us $2,000. It's not a lot of money, but when you're looking for anything you can get, it's something. I was thinking maybe on our Saturday hours, since whenever somebody mans the compost center on a Saturday, is it always overtime?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the average salary for somebody that's working up there? 20? 20 plus?
More like $23 or $24.
So we're looking at about $36, $37 overtime pay. And my thoughts would be to, we're open 8 to 4.
Yes.
My thoughts are to cut back the hours on Saturdays and go to like 8 to 2, 8 to 1. If you're doing that over 5 months or so,
39 times it's open.
39 times. So
Are they contracted for 8 hours then, or can it be?
I
their
think
contract stipulate
that,
once you're out,
I don't
it's
think
not-
it'd be an issue for the guys if it was 4 hours. If it was less, it might be an issue. Very many of the guys split the day in half because it's kind of a long day for one guy. So currently, the guys do split the day, but I think that not only for the guys, but for the public, I think cutting it more than a half a day might be a problem for the.
my
for the
my
people.
thoughts actually were going 8 to 2 and just knocking 2 hours off. Those are my thoughts. You said times 39. That's actually more than what I was figuring, but that would be close to $1,700. And then my other suggestion would be on Wednesdays, we're open till 7:30. Why not just go to 7 o'clock, and then there is a time when it goes to dusk, which now is maybe, 6:30 or so?
Yes.
Just knock off a half hour on Wednesday nights, and that will save us close to $2,000, and I'm just looking at ways to cut some revenue, or expenses. So, I'm just throwing it out there. I think we could save some money, especially the overtime on Saturday. So, people will adjust, because when you put that sign out there, it has the hours right there on there, and you only need to drive by one time. It's in our newsletters, it's on the website. You drive by one time and you look and see what it is, you know what it is for the season. So, those are my thoughts for saving a little bit of money. Are we going over sewer and water individually, or are we just doing capital projects?
That's what you need. Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's been discussed that our water fund is in the hole right now.
underwater.
Yeah, the water fund is underwater.
So, I mean, it's highly likely that a water increase is gonna be
Changes.
Coming up.
Changes in water rates will occur.
I just want to put my 2 cents in on this. I think that currently we're paying 13 something per meter. I don't know the exact amount, but it's 13 and change.
$13.55 for a
$13.55.
regular household meter,
Right.
$1.95 per thousand.
My thoughts are to raise up the either individual meter rate from 13.55 to maybe 15. The rental units, they had asked that we eliminate the one meter going in, and then we charge for each individual unit. I think we should eliminate that one charge for the first meter and just charge for the individual units and charge the same rate that each resident is charged. And then I think we should have a minimal rate increase for the water itself per 1,000 gallons. And I say minimal because some people would prefer a strategy of saying, okay, let's raise it this high so we don't have to raise it for another 5 years. My thought process is that let's just raise it with what we need to, because people are hurting right now. And if we need to raise it in another year, we raise it in another year. Maybe the economy picks up in another year and then we can readjust from there. But I would like to raise it the bare minimum for water rates.
I didn't understand your multi-unit
Okay.
theory.
Right now,
Yeah, I know what we do now, I just didn't understand what
On your desk,
proposal
I
was.
also gave you a handout that has all those water rate calculations on it.
what
I just didn't understand what your proposal was, if you could.
okay, right now they pay $13.55 for a meter hookup. That's your bare minimum without any water running through, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Depends on the size.
Can
but
I
yes.
explain this
It's
to them,
5/8
Brent?
inch.
I understand, I just didn't understand.
If you take a 4-unit apartment and there's 1 meter, you're charged $13.55 for the meter, and then you're charged $8 for all 4.
Another $24.
He's saying eliminate that multi-unit charge for the meter, for the unit that has a meter attached to it.
Right.
Did I say that right?
Okay.
And then have
Increase everything else.
Yeah.
and then have the same rate as residents for the rest of the units.
So,
And
So you're paying
increase that from $13.55 to $15, or whatever.
you're saying eliminate it though for the multi-users, they don't pay that fee then?
Eliminate the first.
The first fee is charged as other
but
$8 fee.
But
Oh,
charge.
whatever the unit, whatever the fee is for each unit then they
Correct.
have,
Correct.
pretending they have a meter.
Yes. No.
Because they don't have
For
meters.
each unit.
But just charging them the same as if they had a meter, even though they don't have a meter.
Correct. Our solicitor already said we can do that.
No, I understand, I just wanted to hear your proposal. It's been in our committee, we've discussed it a few times, and I just wanted to hear your proposal. Other questions for Mr. Clapper, behind schedule? and your quick questions.
Chair.
Brent? Doug?
No, those are the only things I wanted to bring up.
Dr. Waddell, anything else?
Nothing else, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clapper. I think it's thorough, I think it's good. I appreciate your input and your ability to work with us.
More than welcome. Thank you for taking the
Yeah,
time.
thanks for your time.
By the way, Mike, I just noticed that the flagpole at Fuller's, the remember, our new.
Right, we take about 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
I
We're
just
gonna take a
saw-
5-minute break.
Thank you.
Why wouldn't we take a 5-minute break? You took all the money,
Well, there's nothing left. You get everything, man.
as Forrest Gump would say.
You get everything.
All that. I said the same thing.
Are we having an executive session after this?
Right.
I don't know. So did you, Dave, did you try to fix it, or did you just say the heck with it?
I'll tell you what, I looked at it, I made 3 passes, and the light went on. And I thought, what could this possibly be? They just delivered it. So I got off, and I looked down underneath it,
Yeah, you said it was.
and it was saturated. I'm like, I got a problem. Hose, drain plug, something.
Yeah.
Shut it down, put it in neutral, posted it to my garage, just put it in, and I called the dealer on, look. You know, the last one.
I'd flip, I'd be mad.
And I needed to get the grass cut. It had to happen because I had to go. I said, you know, I maintained my last mower myself. And that thing ran forever. And now you suggested that I do this because it's a manufactured thing. So I do it, and here I sit.
I told
I
you.
got a motor with no oil. I got smoke.
Oh, man, I told you when we were coming up the steps, a couple weeks ago.
Why did it please?
I mean, my mowers, you know, I mean, I have the typical yard tractor, and I, thinking that my shed is fine, you know, everything's closed up, but it's up along the wood line.
Yeah.
Not thinking that mice and squirrels would, you know, they've been living there longer than I have.
When you think it can't.
Started up, I take one pass at it about 3 weeks ago, oh, well, it's been about a month now. Thing stalls on me going down the house.
You know,
I don't know. Well, bottom line, and I couldn't get it started, and then, so I cleaned everything out, I got it started, it worked, I got the yard done. Next time I go out to mow, it died on me again. So I said, the heck with it, I'm not screwing with it, I took it to a repair shop. Guy says a mouse chewed through the ground wire. So what do? I go in the shed, right? And I'm like, well, where the heck are these mice in their nests? Well, they were everywhere. They were all over. So it's an all-out war. I mean, I have traps poison. I found one. I tried to stab it. You know, next thing I'll get my shotgun out there.
I can almost accept
Almost
that.
beside a wall.
I can almost accept that. But when a person, like, I bet you the drain plug wasn't put in. Or they didn't tighten the fuel filter.
They did something.
They didn't tighten the oil filter. I've got brand new oil all over it, right? I'm like, why did they do this with stuff? Just when
No,
you,
yeah, but in your case, I'd be more on fire.
just when you think you can't have, it's a $20,000 tractor. I plow it, I pick up leaves with it, I cut grass with it, everything. Here I am, 50 hours, and it's sitting there with a
Oh,
cup of oil. on it.
I'd be upset.
Oh, I was not
I would
happy.
be, yeah. Don't blame you.
God. All at 5 o'clock this evening.
Right, I mean, you left with every intention.
I left at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, you left with every intention
It's your meeting, let's go.
All right, we're back, Chief. We're up to you with your budget and your requests.
Okay, let me first thank you for the opportunity, again, all council and Mr. Manager. I'm going into my 13th budget year, and not every opportunity was given to hear from the department heads, so we certainly, I'm sure all of us appreciate that, as I do as well. So let me just start out with a couple of comments first. I guess I'll just go to the operating side of the budget first. And having said a budget proposal, that's exactly what it is. Obviously, we come to you with a best-case scenario of what we believe could effectively run our departments. Understood that cuts come in, things happen, things get get changed, so I can't recall any budget year where I left with the amount of budget that we requested. So understood it's a process, and we come in, and that's why we ask for things that we believe we need. On the operational side, I just wanted to make mention of this, because I know we've all been through this the past couple of years, but I'm certain most of the members of the Budget and Finance Committee will recollect that the past couple of years we had some serious cuts to make. Every department head did, and as did the police department. And there were some cuts, I think, that we did make, that we did communicate that they weren't sustainable. And you'll find some of that on the operational side of things when you look at the budget performance. We said we can't sustain this budget. We know that it's less than we need to start out with. And the fact of the matter is, some of those, that's what's happened. Also, what we did to give back was, I'm sure most of council is aware, if not Budget of Finance is aware, and the manager is aware, that back in 2009, when we started some of these operational cuts, it became aware that the police department does have a checking account that it maintains for specific purposes of when we get a donation that's earmarked for a specific reason. For example, a $1,000 donation for the K-9 program, or a $500 donation for the crossing guards, et cetera, et cetera. Bulletproof vests, what have you. What we did was, over the years, we maintained that checking account. At one time, back in 2008, 2009, it was about $25,000 worth of donations, and also some equipment sales that we had. If we would sell a piece of equipment and we would get some funding for that, we would put it back in an equipment fund. So what council asked us to do, and we graciously agreed, was to spend down that checking account in lieu of making some cuts in the operational side that were not sustainable. For example, use the donations towards the K-9 program. Use the donations towards the crossing guards, who indeed are volunteers, as you're well aware. Use some of the funding that you got for bulletproof vests, although we know, it's a contractual item, and every 5 years we buy a bulletproof vest for every officer in the department. So we've done that. What I would say to you today is we're about in the $9,000 range of having spent down that account over the past couple of years for operational needs. We bought 13 vests last year. We bought 5 this year. 3 were tactical. So we used quite a bit of that money from the checking account in lieu of council asking us to do that. So I make mention of that because as we look at our budget performance, and I've met with the manager, we found some of these areas where we were in trouble. For example, one of them was the K-9 maintenance fund, for example, primarily covers vet bills and food and the cost of training for the year. Well, we know the cost of training for a year is a certain amount of money, but we budgeted less than that amount. So going in, we knew that we were going to make that budget. So I say that to all of you so that as you look at our operational proposal, you're going to see some of those line items that I speak about that were bumped back up to try to make budget again for what they really show. And some of them are some of those that I mentioned. The schools and training budget, we've been cutting that over the past couple of years because frankly, we have to cover the costs of mandatory trainings, first aid, CPR, firearms qualifications, things that we must do every year. What suffers is any additional training that you have to do, specialties, use of force, other things that we must provide to all the department. So I make mention of that some of these line items you're going to see at the end of the year are going to go over budget. Obviously what we're doing, we're working with the manager to try to make those up in other areas. So when you see on the operational side, plus this amount or plus that amount, those are line items that council asked us to cut, and we indeed did that. We're on the slippery slope now, because once the checking account and the donations are spent, then we're coming back to ask you folks for that money. So I caution you about that. Just please keep that in mind when you look at that. Why is the chief asking for $1,000 more for K-9? That's the reason. Keep in mind, though, that something as valuable as the K-9 program, for example, just to point that out, our Lions Club has purchased every dog the department's ever owned at a cost of between $10,000 and $15,000 per dog. What do we pay for? Maintenance training for the year, food, and vet care. So it's a bargain. And I say that to you, it's a popular program, but That's something that has suffered, and we made those cuts because we were asked to do that. So when you see that, please recognize that we're not asking for more because we think we would like it. It just wasn't sustainable, and we spent down those accounts. Some of the big ticket items on the operational side are what we generally talk about. Overtime is always a coin flip as to where we are. Last year, we cut that one pretty hard, knowing at the time we had some vacancies in the department, knowing that we probably weren't going to reach that number, and keeping in mind in what we do. We're 24/7, so we don't always replace an officer, but there's many times where we do. For example, vacation times, trainings, sick time, things like that, where you have to plug in another officer, it then becomes overtime. And I think we cut that line item a little bit too deep last year, knowing that we had vacancies on the department that we had to fill. I think council will recall back in 2008, I was before you when we looked to increase the manpower, and I gave you an assurance, and we kept our pledge that we would cut our part-time force down and maintain it of 2 people, and we've done that. And I'm coming from a department where we once had 12 part-time people. We're down to 2, we've maintained that, and we cut that budget in half and we've kept it there. In addition to that, when we added manpower back in 2008, we gave an assurance that we would trim overtime costs to the best of our ability. And we were able to trim between $30,000 and $40,000 off the overall cost of overtime to us that year. How did we do that? We did that by filling in with a 7 to 3 officer, 7 at night to 3 in the morning, and when somebody took off or when there was somebody at training, we didn't replace them. So that helped us cut down some costs too. So I mentioned that since 2009, it may or may not be a surprise to council, we've had vacancies in the department. One still exists. We've been fortunate enough to fill some of those, but since I was before you in 2008, we haven't been the full complement. So I make mention of that because that has an effect on the overall overtime budget. The other issue that came to light was our fuel account in operating. I believe we gave $4,000 or $5,000 back to council last year on that, kind of knowing that we weren't going to make it, and now this year we're in trouble. So I make mention of that, and they're highlighted in your binders to show that we made some pretty deep cuts that were not sustainable. So we need to think about those things. We also cut the downtown police officer position in half. There was discussion about cutting it all together. Council made the choice of funding it in half. We've done that. Our downtown officer works primarily 15 to 18 hours a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so you don't have a 35 or 38 hour person down there. So we've kept that particular budget down as well. One of the other issues that we need to look at was the firing range. That was another area where we took a hit in the last couple of years where we couldn't even pay our utility bills to do that. And quite frankly, we made some improvements that we needed to make. For example, ventilation, with the amount of lead buildup, we had to do some improvements in ventilation. Some other improvements in there that we had to make. There was no money to do that. So we cut those accounts, and I just want to make mention of those, that we recognize those as we move forward over the next couple of years, that they were cut pretty deep. We've done a lot of volunteer work, for example, down in our range. Some of our officers have done some work. Graciously, the Public Works Department has been in there and has done yeoman's work in getting that building to a point where, it's safe. The public could go in there, children could go in there, officers can shoot in there, it's ventilated, and it's more appropriate to the conditions that we're in. It's a critical resource that we own, that the borough has owned for years, that we've maintained, that was simply at one time just a long building that a couple officers got together and converted into a range. And I say that to you because the alternative is other police departments pay per hour, per diem, to go into a range to qualify, which is something that the state mandates we do. We have our own, so we don't pay a fee to use our own building, of course, but there are some upkeep costs that we're lagging in, and we've made some improvements. So kudos to the Public Works Department and all of you for working with us on that. So as you see these at the end of the year, the budget, and you look at that, those are some of the areas that I pinpointed that were problem areas, and when you look on the operational side for 2013, you might see those bumped up a little bit. So if you have any questions on that, certainly, if you want to look on the operational side first, we can do that.
Sure. Have you had any requests for the downtown police service to be expanded?
The Main Street partners are always looking to have more hours, more visibility, and they would like to have the officer more time. They got accustomed to having a person down there 5 and 6 days a week, and last year we trimmed that back in half. They're satisfied, so to speak, with what we're doing now, the bare minimum. Of course, they would like us to expand those hours, but the trade-off that we gave back for that was, of course, we don't bring in the amount of revenue on the parking ticket side. Obviously, there's not as much parking ticket revenue generated if he's there 15, 18 hours a week versus 30 or 35. So there's a trade-off there. The visibility is a little bit lessened, but what we tried to do was target the business's primary time where they're active and busy, and that what they asked for, we gave them was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. What they lost was they lost the farmer's market. Okay, we don't have the downtown officer there for the farmer's market, and at times for some of the events, we supplement with some other people, and we have to unfortunately charge the Main Street partners when we give them a full-time officer, and they have an event, and especially when it's a fundraising event, we've been charging them. They're not fond of that. I'll be honest about it, but it's just something that we've been forced to do. So to answer your question, yeah, we've kept it at that 15, 18 hours. Yes, I've had people come forward and ask for more, and I point back to the budget and say this is what we've been left with.
I haven't heard
Okay.
that we need more, so I just was curious from you.
I don't know what the members of council have heard, but
I don't know either.
I have been
No one's
approached.
complained to me that we need more yet.
It's been relayed to me from the Main Street partners.
Right. It's one of those things that we follow the wishes of council, and that's what we're doing for now. If council so chooses to increase those hours, then, again, the budget is going to come into play there.
Dr. Waddell.
Chief, I see there's a motorcycle in this budget.
Yeah, we'll get to capital later. I thought we'd go through the operational side, and then we'll talk about that. It's an interesting one.
Mr. Ladenburg.
Yeah, I was totaling up the wages,
Yeah.
and it's $1.2 million for our officers' wages, and that's not even benefits. That's not including your salary or our clerk or data entry,
Right.
which is another $153,000.
153, where are you at, Brent?
That's including your salary and the two
Oh, okay.
and the two officers.
Okay, you added them, okay.
Pretty steep, and there's nothing we can do about that other than laying off, and I'm not.
Right.
I'm not.
Advocating.
No.
Right.
But I keep going back to this in my head, this drug task force officer, that we are in an agreement with the county that at any time either side can pull out from that agreement. And we are paying for the wages of that officer, correct?
We are paying for the straight time for the officer. We are not paying for overtime, we're not paying for training time. For example, right now, inside these four walls, he's on a DEA wiretap, which involves multiple jurisdictions, including us. The DEA is paying for those services.
Right, so basically
But
we
his
pay-
salary is paid by
Their
us.
salary and
Right.
wages are
Right.
and benefits are paid by us, which equals maybe, Shane, maybe you can help me.
I'd have to look at the contract.
Straight time and wages for one officer would be,
If you have the contract in front of you.
Straight time and wages.
just an estimate, I don't know.
3-year officer.
Anything within-
With straight time, about 74,000.
Okay. Are we one officer short right now?
We are.
I don't know if there's some kind of phase-out program we can do, and at this point, that officer has been there for 2 years, maybe?
Oh, it's longer than that. It's over 3.
And if I recall, like Salisbury had an officer in that program, and if I recall, they were in for a certain amount of time. And I believe there should be some kind of rotation with other municipalities contributing to that, and not just one municipality it is a county
No, there's a
program.
number of municipalities.
Well, I know, and there was one for Salisbury, I believe.
Oh, there's Upper Saucon, there's several from.
I don't know currently, but I'm going by from what you,
There are over 10 officers right now from multiple jurisdictions. And
All right.
here, and I know, Councilman Labor, that we have a philosophical difference about this. And I've said this to council before, and I'll mention it again. The value of being proactive with narcotics cannot be understated. And I'm certain that some of you are aware of some of the folks that we've incarcerated, without mentioning names. The value that you get back with participating in that task force is just unbelievable. What we don't have is we don't have officers in the department that we can go out and say, you take care of these drug investigations. So what we have at our beck and call is we have a team of people, a group of people, and let's face it, Emmaus is going to get to the front of the line, or those departments that participate are going to get to the front of the line when you have a drug complaint, however serious. And what I would say to you is, I can tell you that the difference between not having an officer participate, who by the way, happens to be assigned to this jurisdiction, anything that comes out of Emmaus narcotic related, or even if it has an overlap, and I should point out that narcotics and other crime has a tremendous overlap. Crime doesn't stop at the borders of Emmaus, nor is it just a narcotic problem. Burglars use drugs, armed robbers use drugs, they steal money, they do a variety of things, and the network that we're involved in and having a specialist perform that function proactively for Emmaus is, I can't emphasize enough the value and importance of that. And some of the people that we put behind bars who resided here is a direct result of having an officer who was on a wire for a month, or who was participating with 8 or 9 other investigators because maybe the kingpins came out of Allentown, but maybe the gangbanger was in Emmaus. And we take them down that way. And I would say to you that, of course, the departments who don't participate, if they get a drug complaint and they call the drug task force, they're going to get to it. But what I'm going to say to you is we take priority. And the officer we have assigned there now is beyond belief. You know, he's a superstar. He is doing excellent work for us and the surrounding region. And I would say this to you as well, we solved armed robberies through the drug task force. We solved bank robberies. How? Through the communication of these informants and people who deal with this. Let's face the facts. They don't see the sign that says Emmaus stop here. They're coming in from other areas. They're committing crimes here. Having that network, I can't emphasize enough how valuable that is. So I understand the monetary concern about that, but I can also tell you that the payback that we get for that is just invaluable. I can't overemphasize that enough.
Chief, not to belittle it, but everything you said I heard probably 3 times
I know
over the
you
years.
have.
I heard everything, and I agree with everything you said. But here's the fact, the reality. We don't have the money. We don't have money, period. We do not have money. And if we can bring an officer back to our police force, and he can still utilize that knowledge of everything he learned, I would think. It's just a reality, and I'm just throwing it out there. And I may not get the support for it, but I'm actually in favor of that because that solves the officer that we're short on. And maybe 2-3 years from now, we send another officer there and get the benefit of training another officer and learning training another officer and bringing that knowledge back. But right now, the economy and the budget, we don't have money. We can't even pave roads. We can't buy trucks. We can't buy fire equipment. We don't have money. Zilch.
And when the economy lessens, crime picks up. So what I would say to you
I mean, it's been that way for 3 years.
But we're entering into a philosophical
And we are,
debate. That's absolutely not necessary at this point.
Okay, I'm
We've
just
done
throwing it
enough
out there
times.
that is an option.
Yeah,
It's a
let's
priority.
go to your capital. I agree with you, Chief. Oh, I'm sorry, operating budget, Mr. Brown.
Operating budget, just, it kind of segues into capital, but
Right.
bicycle patrol maintenance, item number 255, 410, 255, you have an increase there of $2,000. That increase there, what kind of maintenance does a bicycle get? And does that bicycle patrol maintenance, does that $2,000 extra, does that replace a bicycle?
What we're looking to do.
Versus what you have in your patrol
Right.
bikes capital? I'm sorry to You just wanted that, but I need a little bit of clarification.
Right.
The other question is, real quickly, is line item 410, 473, Lehigh County Emergency Response Team. Is that the drug task force?
No,
Chief?
no.
That is something different?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Let me take the bikes first. What we need to do, one of two things. Our patrol bikes are 1999s. Some of those were donated bikes that the department received through donations. They're alienated replacement. So we either need to do one of two things. We have to completely reconstruct our fleet of 4 patrol bikes. I'm talking pet cycles now.
Yeah.
Or we need to buy at least 2 new ones and assign the officers who ride the bike to those. Because what we have is, we just have a fleet that either needs total reconstruction, which is gonna mean we have to take those bikes to Bike Line or wherever, and they need to be stripped down and reconstructed, or we purchase new bikes. So I put that on the capital side, basically saying to you all that, obviously, the best option is to buy 2 new patrol bikes.
But on your expenditure side, you have an increase of $2,000.
Right, if you don't buy the bikes, we're gonna spend some money on them.
On new bikes?
So knowing that,
On new bikes or refurbishing
No.
the old ones?
fixing the ones we have. So basically, if you choose to cut that item out of capital, we gotta fix our bikes. So obviously, if you buy new bikes, we're not gonna spend money to
Well, instead
refurbish
of,
the ones
can I
we
ask you
have.
this? Instead of in the capital, I don't want to get into capital yet.
Right.
But even though I see the capital with, when you just use the money, if you're going to increase the maintenance, I mean.
He's saying one or the other, Nate.
I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Pick one or the other, not
you
both.
either fix your existing bikes.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Or you
I
buy
guess
new
that's what I'm
ones.
asking.
That's what he's saying.
It's
He
your
put it-
choice.
He put the same thing in 2 places, you pick
Right.
which one, you're gonna have to spend one of
So
them.
one will be taken out if one's. bad.
Exactly.
Got it, thank you.
And with respect to your question on
You
473.
already answered it. You said no, it was not the drug task force.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else on the operational side?
Chief, I see on 137, increase of $3,000 for downtown police.
Yeah.
Just contractual pay increase?
No. What happened was, we hired the existing downtown officer, if you'll recall, in the neighborhood of April or May of last year. So we're tracking his salary for the year. If he is to sustain the same salary for a full year next year, you should expect that that would be the amount of the difference.
So that's 15 to 18 hours a week, 52 weeks a year.
15, you're talking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and with about a 5-hour shift. So 15, sometimes maybe an hour over that, so maximum 18 hours per week he's working right now.
Times 50, times 52 weeks,
Correct.
52 weeks. a
We
year.
hired him in, I believe, the first.
I believe you're
week
right.
of May.
I believe you're right, and I think we planned it that way.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
All right, capital.
Capital, what I did was what we tend to always do every year. I did put a 5-year plan together. You'll see in your binders, there's quotes for a variety of things. What I'll try to do here is prioritize some of this stuff for you, starting with a bit of good news, which I believe. You've all heard before about, unfortunately, the 2006 police facility with a HVA system that was not functional since the day we went in the door. What we did was we brought in some contractors to look at what would it take to fix not only the heating, but the air conditioning in such a way that we don't have to call for maintenance every couple of months. The boiler goes into default, we pay, a fee for vendors to come out, troubleshoot it, fix it and all that. And what we looked at was, what is it gonna take to fix this thing so that it's functional? The good news is that I contacted 2 vendors. One is a borough vendor who we use for multiple buildings, and another was Burkholder here recently, who we've used in town, who's been maintaining the HVA system throughout the past couple of years. What they found was, there's no need to tear out an existing boiler, which our vendor here in the borough said we needed to start over. We needed to put a new boiler in. We needed to make some structural changes in the building in order to make this effective and efficient, so to cut down on our costs of utility fees. What Burkholder said is, no, we're looking at the schematics of the drawing of your building, and you do not have the components that you should have got from day one. So when the contractors came in and put the boiler in, there's also some other components to help that boiler work that are not there. They don't exist. So what continues to happen is the furnace goes into default regularly. And it tends to happen when it's the coldest, when it's the warmest, it goes into trouble, and then we have to get troubleshooting done. What we've done is tried to use the highway department first to look at it and say, is there something that they could take care of? Bottom line is, I got 2 quotes. And one, it's going to cost us $8,600 to fix both the heat and the HVAC permanently. What we have is we have a server room downstairs which heats up to an average of 80 to 85 degrees during the day. There's a lot of technology running in there. And what happens is it heats up. We had a server go into default because the room is not at a climate control level, and then equipment starts to break. That's one part of this equation. The other is when the heat goes off, the building's down to 60 degrees, 58 degrees over a weekend, or maybe for 2 or 3 days till it's back up. In order to fix that appropriately, if you look in your binders, Burkholder is saying that's the cost to you to install the components on the boiler and in the server room to make it functional, and it will also help the efficiency of your utility costs. To be quite honest with you all, I was expecting anything from $25,000 to $50,000 to start over, because that's what Yeakel was telling us. This system is not going to work, it's not functional, it's not designed for this application, and you need to start over. Burkholder said, no, we can make this work with the proper equipment attached. So I thought that was a pretty nominal amount of money. I was expecting it to be much more. So you'll see those quotes in your packets. Obviously, every year you get requests for police vehicles. That's not unlike any other year. I don't know if it was you, Councilman Brown, or who, the council as a whole, had requested a vehicle retention plan. Those should have went in your box this week. And what it does is it points out the argument we've made year after year after year. A little bit about vehicles. Number one is they're used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, some of them. We're a 365-day-a-year operation. All kinds of weather. No highways. So our average speed that we drive our vehicles is about 27 to 35 miles per hour. Stop, go, stop, go. To put it mildly, the miles that we put on our car are very, very tough miles. So what we look at is we try to rotate officers. We assign officers to cars. That's their responsibility. Primarily, there's 2 to 3 officers per car assigned. That's their vehicle. And we do that to keep the mileage in track and also for accountability. One officer in the department will average between 10 and 15,000 miles per year per car. How does that happen? If you do the math, if an officer patrols on the low end of 50 miles a shift, or on the high end 100 miles a shift, and you add the number of hours each officer works in a year, the mileage adds up. So we typically get 3.5 to 4 years of life out of a patrol car. What else comes into play with a car is warranties. We used to buy extended warranties here years back. We don't do that anymore. When we get to the 75, 80, 90,000 mile mark, we like to recycle them. Why? Because if an engine blows, we're paying the bill. If a transmission goes, we're paying the bill. So the effect of recycling means that you try to keep your vehicles on a plan where if we were able to replace a car this year, 2 cars next year, a car the year after, 2, and if you follow their ratio of 1 car, 2, 1 car, 2, it cycles itself out. And on your spreadsheet, you're going to find a listing of all our vehicles, the mileages on the vehicles, the year of the vehicle, and the intended retention or the recycling of the vehicle. And what that basically gives you is an idea that, we take 14 vehicles, and depending on the mileage, and depending on how many people drive them, the miles rack up. So I would encourage you to, we've done a pretty good job on retaining vehicles here the past couple of years, and I would encourage you to continue to do that. Which brings up the issue of 2013 should now become a one-year vehicle versus two. I think you'll see in your capital plan, I asked for two. That's before we knew that we would be getting a vehicle at the back end of 2012. So you can cut in half the amount of capital request for vehicles in 2013. For a number of years, for 3 to 4 years, obviously when I put the budget out to the rank and file every year and ask them what they're looking for, one of the issues that has come up for the past 3 to 5 years is, how about a motorcycle? A couple of reasons for that. We have a couple officers who ride regularly, and there's a couple different uses for motorcycles that may not necessarily be used in a car. So I throw that out to you for consideration because there's a couple advantages to doing that. Number one is, obviously, the fuel use of a motorcycle is going to be a lot less than a car or an SUV that's typically idling, again, driving that 25 miles per hour, 35 miles per hour regularly. You're going to get better fuel mileage. The other thing we can do is we can assign officers to a motorcycle to patrol, such as Allentown does, and Bethlehem does, and Berkeley High, some of the other departments. Assign a specific officer to a motor unit. What are some of the advantages of motor units versus a car? Traffic enforcement. Obviously, they're not as visible. Number two, special events, parades, obviously we just went through that. We don't do many of them, but what we do a lot of, several a week, is funeral escorts. When you look at places like Bethlehem PD, Allentown PD, their motor units take care of escorts. We get a lot of oversized loads that come out of CVIP, for example, that our officers have to get through town and maneuver out of town. Motorcycles are very effective for that. We have an interest from several of our officers who ride regularly to do this. So we have to look at the advantages. One is we can purchase a motorcycle fully equipped for less money than a passenger car or an SUV. We can, number two, we can assign specific officers to that unit. We can assign that unit to special details. We can assign that unit to escorts, oversized loads, and things like that. So what I looked at was, could we cut down somewhat on our mileage on a patrol vehicle while we assign 1 or 2 or possibly even 3 officers to a motorcycle? Yes, we could do that. We have one specialty vehicle in the fleet that's about 160, 170,000 miles. We're not going to maintain it. It's probably going to get phased out. Once we phase that out, and it happened to be a DARE vehicle, by the way, the discussions I had with the rank and file was, how about the consideration from council for a motorcycle? I don't ride them. I don't like them. So, but they do have an absolute good use in law enforcement. I've seen the advantages of them, and I think it's worth maybe a try. It's a cheaper way of purchase of a vehicle, and also, you know, you put that officer out there, and I can tell you that most of the motor guys are riding, and officers are riding almost year-round. Other than the deep cold of the winter or inclement weather, they're out in the fall, they're out in the spring, they're out in the summer. That's their assignment, that's their vehicle. They get a radio, they get an iPad or something like that to do their reports, and off they go. And they're patrolling with it. So there's a couple advantages to that. So I ask you to consider that. Well, if we do make a vehicle purchase next year, let's explore that option. Questions on that?
Well, are you going to finish all capitals?
I will, but I thought maybe you'd want to
Well,
talk about the motorcycle.
well, it sounds great, but I'm just confused because you said 2 police vehicles and you said you only need 1, but in parentheses behind there you say 1 SUV. Is that the vehicle you're looking to replace, an SUV?
Right.
So the patrol car would actually be, are you replacing an SUV or are you adding another one to the one that we currently have?
If we replace, the vehicle that will be going will be an SUV.
Okay, so it's an SUV for an SUV?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you're asking for an SUV and 1 motorcycle. Now you say to cut that number in half, 60,000. 30,000 would cover an SUV and a motorcycle?
We purchased the vehicle a week ago. So you can cut that, in other words, you can cut
Yes,
that
please,
in
yeah.
half. You purchased it already.
You
Already
only
bought
need
it.
money for
It
the
happened.
motorcycle.
So all you need is money for 1 vehicle. You make the choice.
And that's the motorcycle?
It's whatever.
Could be the
Whatever we
motorcycle
choose
or
to.
the
Okay, well,
SUV.
I mean, I favor the motorcycle, I see the advantage. My one question I was gonna ask, is it seasonal, and you pretty much answered that.
One
One
day
other,
like today, this week they'd definitely be riding.
Oh, my God, yeah. Without question.
and one other question, do any departments lease police cars?
They do. Typically, like any other lease, you have to weigh the difference between what you pay overall for the course of the lease versus purchasing.
I have experience with leasing police cars. The banks, a lot of banks don't like it. There are a few banks that will do it, but it's always a buy it for $1 at the end of the lease.
When you say banks, I don't,
Financing.
okay, so
Usually
that would
you have
up in
to
the budget,
finance-
you have to actually finance.
Yeah, leasing them would be a financing program where you buy it for $1 after the end of 3 years or whatever. And you're usually paying 2.5%.
So you don't see any advantages?
Not if, the only time that that's advantageous to you is if for some reason you were to go like 2 or 3 years without buying a car and you needed to, buy 3 cars in 1 year, and you could do, a lease over 3 years so that you're kind of.
So a lease, I always assume, a lease program is not where you lease it for 3 years and you give it back.
Not on a police car.
And then you get another car and
Not
lease
on a
it.
police car, and the reason is because you have to detail that thing. You're gonna have to put Emmaus Borough stickers on it, you're going to have to put
Okay.
our radio
Alright.
system in it, all the
So
infrastructure.
essentially, you end up buying it anyhow, so there's, it's.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah,
the only advantage to it is if you were buying multiple cars in a year,
Spread out the price.
and you wanted to spread out the cost of it, that's the only advantage to doing
Okay.
it.
My experience, Brad, has been that very large departments, i.e. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, some of the state police organizations, not all, will lease because they might be buying several hundred cars. So it's not cost effective for them to do that kind of money, one time out of the gate. But typically, I can say to you in this area, Lehigh County Chiefs of Police, Northampton Chiefs of Police, most purchase them. It just becomes a hassle at the end of the lease that now we got to tear all our equipment out of it. Now what damage is done to it, what do we owe back on the lease? With the price you're paying off a state contract, really, for the price of vehicles, you're getting a pretty good deal.
So it's either a motorcycle or an SUV, is that the choices?
Right.
Well, wouldn't a motorcycle be cheaper than an SUV?
Well, it would be, and we've never had one, so I think council needs to be aware that I wouldn't just go out and buy a motorcycle without talking to you all. When you see it, I think you'd be asking me questions.
You said cut it in half to 30,000, a motorcycle would be 30,000?
The quotes that you'll see in your binder for a fully equipped motorcycle, which we are exploring in addition to that, some grants that are out there through Harley Davidson, through some of the others. I don't have any assurances right now that we can obtain those grants, but we are exploring it, is that you can purchase a fully equipped police motorcycle for about $25,000.
Okay.
That's everything.
Do insurance rates go up then too, or?
Not any more than they would with anything else.
Okay.
It's just another.
Well, I personally would favor a motorcycle because I see advantages to it, but, and there's one, I don't know the lingo, you threw a CVIP out there, I didn't know what that was.
It's a business on Broad Street.
CVIPs on Broad Street, and they haul those large containers for various places, Nassau and stuff. We get a lot of oversized loads out of there, and we get the highway department tied up with them. We have officers escorting them.
Okay, I just didn't know what, I thought it was,
Yeah, it's
you were
escorted.
using some police lingo.
It's
I didn't
over,
realize it was a
no,
business.
no, it's oversized loads, is what it
Okay.
is. Right. So what you would do then is you would purchase, you're going to be purchasing one vehicle next year, not two. This was a rotation year where we would have asked for two. You're purchasing one right now, so you don't have to do that. Next year, you buy one vehicle,
Which is the motorcycle.
your choice.
Stop saying vehicle, you're messing me up.
So if we go down there again, I asked for the patrol bike, I asked for two, we have four. We do have 3 to 4 officers that ride regularly. It's a popular thing. We priced them out, the quotes are in your binders. Again, there's some equipment we need to put on them for the officers when they ride. But we got some pretty long and hard use out of our 1999 patrol bikes. So that's in there. The other thing you'll see there is some storage issues that you've seen in the past couple of capital budgets. We have an evidence room now that's probably about 90% capacity, in other words, full. What we did in our file room a couple of years ago, that you provided some funding where we took the file room and we actually brought in a special, there's a person actually deals with file systems, law file systems, it deals with the county and the DA's office, where we went floor to ceiling with roller type cabinets where we expanded our capacity of file room by 50%. Unfortunately, we sit here to have to say this, but that in 2006, storage didn't seem to be as big an issue as we sit here today and say, wow, we have a file room that's full, we have an evidence room that's full. How do we expand on it? Well, we're not gonna build on. So we have to make the best use of the space. So we brought our expert in, who did our file room. He looked at our evidence room and said, I could get you another 35, 38% more space. And he does that specifically through cabinetry. And if you've ever seen them in the larger libraries, they're just rolling cabinets that you move. And instead of having multiple aisles, you get one aisle. And they kind of stack next to each other and they go.
Rolling around. Yeah. This is an issue where Dave and I tried to brainstorm different options, and you've got to see the evidence room to believe it, I think. So if you've never seen it, maybe ask the chief if you can just peek your head in
Welcome
there.
to go through it. I mean,
It is packed from gill to gill.
one homicide case takes up 25%, one homicide case, and there's several of them. One homicide case that's unsolved takes up 25% of our evidence room. We're talking about racks of things that we have to maintain forever. We have to keep them. The good news is a lot of that stuff is testable, and with the technology today, it's getting better for us to maintain this stuff and test it later because of the technology. So we have to hold on to any evidence that's not gone through the court, with exception of cases that are disposed of. Then we purge evidence. We get rid of it. We get rid of drugs. We get rid of property where it went through trial or it went through final disposition, and then it might be a TV set, and it might be a large screen TV, but picture 5 large screen TVs in a space, and you're taking up a lot of room. So we purge them as the cases are disposed of. Unfortunately, homicides take up a lot of room. We talked about various ideas over there about creating closet space, and again, thanks to Jeff, he noticed early on in the design phase of the project that there wasn't a closet in the building, not a janitor's closet, nothing. And he said, whoa, I don't think we're thinking about where you're gonna put stuff. Fortunately, out of that came a janitor's closet, some office closets, and they measured some filing cabinets that were in the existing police department and said, yeah, we could fit them in here, but we tend to never think about space. And we're confronting an issue in the evidence room where we're about 90% full. So at some point in time, while we're purging, we're going to have to think about increased space there. The other thing that's in there is a copier. And I've talked to the manager about your question, Councilman Laberberg, and that is it better to lease a copier or buy it? And I think what I'm hearing from him and others is that we come to you about every 5 or 6 years to buy a new copier. That's typically the shelf life we get. What I would say to you is we're using it 24/7. We have computers in the cars. Officers are printing to that networked copier. It's an archive copier, so our evidence, for example, any photograph we take gets scanned into the copier in color. It's retained. We are mandated by the DA's office to e-file all cases now. We don't do paper anymore. Guess where that is? It's archived in the copier. So when we send a case file to the DA's office, it goes through our copier. And there's multiple, just thousands of digital evidence in there, photographs, all things we use that for. We use it to scan, we use it to fax, we use it to print out reports to go to court. So we use it hard, is what I'm saying. And we're at a point where this one's ailing, it's gonna go. And the question becomes then, do we look now at a lease and just budget annually for so much cost for a copier? Talk to Shane about it, he's got some experience with it. That might be the way you wanna go, rather than seeing me here every 4 or 5 years asking for it.
I believe we're doing that with the borough, right?
Well, like downstairs, we own that copier, and I would like to pull an office space on that thing, where you take it outside and smash it with baseball bats. If it gets jammed up, I've got to pay money to fix it, which is getting jammed up all the time.
By stapler.
But, whereas the lease, if something happens with it, you call them up and you say, get in here, fix your machine. If you can't fix it, replace it, give me a new one. No additional cost as part of the process. The lease programs are not expensive, the maintenance is tied into it. Now, you'll see two different quotes in your binders. One's a Canon and one's I think it's an off-brand.
Senior or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the lease quotes are pretty drastically different,
Yes.
which we would need to get to the bottom of.
Right.
But really, a lease for what he's looking for, which is probably more than anybody would need, because nobody else would need a color copier. 300, something a month, I think.
Yeah, I think we
What's the
looked at
number?
it. It comes in
Might
about
be down to 200.
$400 a month for a very robust machine. But when you look at your quotes, you're gonna find a huge disparity. We got 2 quotes and we asked for the most robust machine from each vendor. And there's a huge difference. And my question then becomes, what is the difference?
Yeah.
If we're talking about, we gotta spend $25,000 to buy a good copier, or 10, what are we not getting, or what isn't happening? I can't answer that here, that would be something we'd have to research, but we use it very hard.
Copy machines are the one thing that I would tell you you should lease every time.
What?
Technology's changing so fast that from one year to the other, not only that, they're getting smaller and smaller, so it gives you a lot more efficiency.
I agree with
Yeah, I think,
you. School district, we lease them all.
in talking with Shane, I think, with his experience with them, we've always purchased, just because that's what we've done. I think we're at a time where we now know that this is never gonna go away. We're not gonna be without a copier/scanner, machine that does all of that. And we use it daily, around the clock. It's a big piece of equipment.
And these different companies, I mean, they're eager to try to get your business, so I'm sure once we were to go out there and
say we're serious, and this is what we want to do, yes, I think you'll get
see numbers go down. Because we haven't even, I don't even think we found a Xerox dealer yet.
I've been looking since we talked about that, trying to find somebody from Xerox to come in and, offer us some kind of promotion, and we haven't found anyone locally anyway.
I've seen them where they've come down drastically on the numbers. It's just a matter of,
Right.
if that's the route we want to go, then we get, we start getting into the competitive bidding.
We currently have a Canon. I'm not, I have no dog in that fight if it's a Xerox, whatever, as long as it does what we need it to do. And PDFs and capturing digital evidence, any case we go out on, when officers take photographs, they get backlogged into the copier, and then they're later forwarded to the case file, and you may have 30 to 50 pages of material that go over to the county DA. It's a lot of stuff. So the color is an absolute, we have to have it just for evidentiary reasons. I mean, obviously, we don't do a lot of color copying, but it's one of those things that, is important to us. As far as the other capital items, some of those are just monetary things. When Shane put his memo out, he asked to put it out to the rank and file, which we typically do. So there's some things on there that could come out of the operating expenses, things that, for example, that the detectives would be asking for. Update digital cameras, which we carry, camcorders, things like that don't necessarily have to be a capital expense. But I put them on there because we put it out to the rank and file and we came back with their requests. If you were to ask me next year, what are the priorities, I think I heard that tonight. Obviously, I think you want to look at copiers, number one. We've got to replace it one way or the other, so whether we buy or lease, we have to do that. One police vehicle, obviously, to keep the rotation going. The HVAC system, I think we should step forward and fix that and get away from calling quarterly or every couple of weeks, calling vendor in to fix it when it's in default. I was pretty happy with those numbers, to fix it carte blanche for good. Not meaning something that isn't going to break, but I was pretty happy with that.
I was too. I expected 4 or 5 times.
I
was fearful we'd be at 100,000 and putting a whole new system and reconfiguring your whole
Yeah,
station.
I was thrilled, and the variance between the experts who we said, look, look at our system and you tell us what it's gonna take to make it work, there's a huge gap between, our existing vendor wants to start over. And Burkholder says, no way, this is a good boiler. You don't have the attachments to make it effective and run, so we can fix it. You know, I'm pretty confident in that.
Your hand up, Mr. Brown.
Nope.
Questions on capital? Mr. Labenberg?
The HV AC system, do you have just an estimate of how much you spend on repairs this year?
I could get it for you, but if you look in the operational
Are
side.
you talking more than $1,000,
Oh,
couple
yeah.
thousand?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so it's a no-brainer, you replace that and you eliminate the maintenance costs then.
We spent a couple $1,000s just in the month of January.
If you look in the building maintenance.
That's what I wanted to know, so it will pay for itself then, the repair,
Yeah, I think my first 2 weeks here, they were out of heat for, 4 days.
If you look at,
Working in 50-degree weather inside.
look at 362 in the operational side, and I put in there, just because I'm watching our budget performance for the building maintenance, that's anything that breaks down in the building, which includes its HVAC. I put a plus 1,000 in there because I think we're over budget already. And a lot of that attaches itself to that system,
So if this was approved, that line item would come down too?
Exactly. Again, you know, if you're gonna fix it, then we're not gonna have to plan to have as many call-outs and repairs on it.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Very good. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate what you did for us. We'll talk about the motorcycle. I know there's some information in this binder that hopefully everybody will take some time and read. And I saw there's a couple different varieties. I don't know if was there a difference between a BMW and a Harley, or is it just a preference?
Those are the primary manufacturers that build a police cycle.
Okay.
Those are the two that are out there. What I would say to you is the mayor's been after me for about 6 or 8 years to do this. And I just felt it's something that council has to choose to do versus you asking me one day, why is that thing on the street? I think you need to know about it.
Appreciate that. All right. Any personal appeals? All right, hearing none.
Brian, I would like a 30-second executive session.
Okay. And with, no, I don't need. Official?
No action.
No action. Then we'll have an executive session with no action being taken.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, thank you.
All you,
We're all done.
They drop off a lot, right?
Everybody.